go ahead and check us out on our YouTube channel, which is Career Innovations, all one word. You type that in and you can definitely take a look at all of our past Q&A sessions. If this is your first time using GoToWebinar platform, you can ask questions one of two ways depending on how you logged into the workshop. You can raise your hand and I can unmute your mic. That's if you entered your audio PIN number when you logged in, you're able to verbally speak your question. If not, you can definitely text or type your question in the text box below and I will answer it then. Keep in mind that all questions I really do ask to be submitted prior to the workshop. That way we can put together these slides. If there's a question that requires a little bit more thought and research, we can add that to the program. So that way we're just not giving you an answer off the top of our heads. If there are questions that weren't submitted in time, we wait until the end of the program to address those. So if you have a question now, go ahead and type it so that way it can be one of the first questions that are answered towards the closing of the program. Who we are. I like to usually give a 30-second introduction about who we are. If you're not familiar with Career Innovations, we are an executive search firm that was launched in 2007. We're a referral-based firm. We pride ourselves in innovative technology to locate the best talent for our clients. And we also like to give the resources to candidates that we don't place. So there's a lot of job seekers that do reach out to us that we're unable to place either because we don't have an opening or not working with an employer within that particular industry. But we still want to be able to provide some type of resource so they're able to find a job on their own. This is one of the reasons why we offer our free Q&A sessions on a weekly basis. I'm Bridget Baggett. I'm the Director of Staffing and Recruiting. One of my passions is organizational development and change. I really truly believe that an organizational culture starts with the company's core values, and that's the foundation for attracting and retaining top talent. I like to start each session with a quote. This quote is, "Ours, remember your focus determines your reality." So I hope we have a lot of focused individuals on the line tonight, and we definitely can see how we can channel that into some type of productive results. First thing I wanted to address today about a commitment to your job search. We may have some gainfully employed individuals on the line which may not be unemployed. They just may be looking to make a career change. And we may have some individuals on the line that are in need of a job, are currently out of work, not working, and every minute of their day is putting towards looking for a job. So I decided to break down some type of weekly commitments that you should look into. And this pretty much breaks down the average week, even down to the day of what a job seeker should be putting their efforts into. If you're spending most of your time surfing on the internet for job postings, I can tell you right now you're doing it wrong. In a recovering economy, the best way to find your next opportunity is through networking. You know, hands down, that's the best way to find your next opportunity. Not to say that you shouldn't look online and apply for opportunities, but this should not be your only activity, and you definitely should not be doing it during peak times. And what I mean by peak times, this is your 8 to 3 p.m. This is the time when you can get a hold of the decision maker, either via phone or by email. That online posting that you're looking to apply for, guess what? That's going to be available after 5 p.m. That posting's not going anywhere, but that decision maker is. So the activity that you should be doing should be reaching out to these decision makers or networking. The activity that you're using for your online time, this should be saved for unproductive work hours, and this is usually after 4 p.m. You know, adjust that according to your time zone. 4 p.m. Eastern time versus 4 p.m. Pacific time, but it definitely should be after work hours. First thing I want to address is the online job boards and social media. You have your typical job boards. I really urge everyone to use niche job boards if all possible. You know, you will find hidden jobs that are not posted on the standard job boards. Why? Because employers find that they get better traction by posting it on a job board created for their industry. You know, that makes sense, right? You know, human resource positions, normally I'm going to find most of those on, you know, the Society of Human Resource Management website, also known as SHRM. You know, they have a huge database of jobs just for human resource management. And I've also cross-examined to see some of those positions aren't posted on LinkedIn. They're not posted on Indeed, but I find yet many of those niche careers on niche job boards. And again, that goes back to the employer finding that I'm going to put my money where I'm going to find more effective results. And that's usually towards a job board that's dedicated towards their craft. Next one is social media. Regardless, you know, what millennium job seeker you are, doesn't matter. Social media is a requirement nowadays. I hope you're using it in your job search. Many employers are now looking at your online presence in addition to your resume. I recommend that you're using some type of automated platform. What I mean by automated platform, some tool that's going to automatically send out updates. They're going to automatically send out articles of interest. Something that's going to keep your mind or keep your name on the top of employers' mind. And that way you're not tied to this particular social media outlet. You don't have time to be posting to LinkedIn. You don't have time to be posting to Twitter or Facebook. They're free platforms as far as Hootsuite, Buffer, and TweetDeck that are absolutely free, that you can automate this to send out updates in your industry. These are free tools, and you can make some type of interaction. For us, we schedule our social media out for a week or two. So that way we're not touching it but once or twice a month. Research is the next one. Emails, follow-ups. I usually check my emails twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evenings. Emails are not urgent, and I see a lot of job seekers being tied to emails. You don't want to waste your time shuffling through emails all day. Clients and candidates usually have my cell number. If they have a request that's urgent, they either call or text me. Emails can be returned in 12 to 24 hours. That's the same thing with the job seeker as well. You should not be spending all day returning, following up emails, things of that nature, because what you do, you find yourself just online doing nothing, being unproductive. And how I know this, because I've been there. The next thing that I have highlighted in red to me is the most important. This is your networking. If you're currently unemployed, let me tell you this. Congratulations, you're now a professional networker and connector. That's your job. Until you find a position that's going to pay you, your job is now to be a professional networker and connector. Hiding behind a computer screen will no longer bring you a job as fast as it did 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It was times when people could apply to a job and get an interview, within the next 2 or 3 days. They're not anymore. The volume's too high. How can you call 500 applicants that apply to the same job? So your first line of defense is going to be the network. So you cannot try to land a job by solely applying to it online. You should be able to put your face with your name. You should be networking with top professionals in your industry. This includes researching activities or events in your area that are going to bring you closer to your goal. This includes professional groups, also any type of meetups that you can find. Virtual career fairs are now starting to be utilized. You should check out, many companies are starting to do virtual career fairs in which they are actually having candidates come into a kind of a portal. I've seen it done in which they're actually, receiving resumes and setting up interviews online through a virtual career fair. You should definitely be checking this out. Next one, I think volunteer community service and training is something that you should be incorporating into your job search as well. Use this time to sharpen your skills and stay up to date with the current events that are happening in your industry. If you've been out of work for a long time, this should be something that you should be doing in addition to networking. You should be looking at any type of classes you can take, any type of organizations that you can take that can give you the exposure you need to be competitive. Look at joining a nonprofit committee. Doesn't have to be a board. It could be a committee. Many decision makers hold positions on nonprofit boards. Look at doing pro bono work. Depending on your industry, if you're in consulting, marketing, accounting, anything that provides a service, look at doing pro bono consulting work. One thing I looked at, especially for IT as well, it doesn't have to be a consulting as far as business or accounting. It can be IT. I saw a website called Taproot. That's Taproot. It is a website dedicated purely to pro bono work. A lot of people go on there just to connect with companies and actually give them a service. Of course, it's for free, but you're also networking with a company as a whole. I've seen some of the assignments on Taproot that you're actually part of their team. You're working with the VP. You're working with the CEO on projects. Definitely check into Taproot. That's a great platform. The other one is Taproot Plus. Taproot is for people that are located, and don't quote me, but I know on their website you're either in San Francisco, Chicago, New York, or Los Angeles. I think it's the 4 biggest cities. If you're not in one of those 4 major cities, there's Taproot Plus, and that's for everyone else that's not in those major cities. But the work that needs to be done can be done remotely, which means that you're still working with them on a virtual level. You're still working as a team, but you're working remotely. So you can look at Taproot Plus if you're not located in those 4 cities I list. Another one is take a class. Google free classes. I guarantee you, when I first Googled free classes, the whole first page was filled of different nonprofit organizations or academies that offer free courses and partner up with accredited schools to offer courses as well. Check that out. I saw a lot of schools on there that were very well known that were offering free courses through these nonprofit organizations. Definitely check out if you can take free classes. If anything, that's a great look on your resume. May not be a hands-on type of class, but it looks good that you're doing something to improve yourself while you're not working. Another thing is to also look out at industry-related associations for free workshops and webinars. You are able to find this webinar either through my social media or Eventbrite. Nonprofits are using this as a tool as well to get out different industry-related workshops that's going to be definitely closer to your niche than a career web workshop. This is helping you find those places, but I'm pretty sure you would be able to use a niche workshop that's going to actually give you practical knowledge to apply at a job that you apply to. That's what you want. In addition to that, you're going to be networking with people within that organization. So definitely look at some workshops and webinars that you can find within the organization. So to me, this is the job search breakdown weekly commitment. I say that you have about 12 to 16 productive hours in a day. And I use that as taking away 8 hours for sleep. So usually if you wake up anywhere from 8, 9 o'clock, and again, if you're seriously looking for a job, you shouldn't be waking up at noon. You should be treating your job search as if you have a job. So you should be waking up early as if you have a job, and usually from 8 o'clock in the morning, say you go to bed anywhere from 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I say that's anywhere from 12 to 16 hours that you can be productive doing something. And I think that, as you can see at this chart, the bulk of your time should be played with networking, volunteer, community service, or training. And once you're able to do that, applying to jobs online would be easy, because once you start to build those connections, you'll know who to reach out to for these jobs that you see online. This no longer will be a black hole. I'm applying and hoping that somebody will respond. You'll be able to put a name to that job that you're applying to. Hey, I met Jeff at this, at this association meeting. They have a job opening at XYZ. Now I can apply online and contact Jeff to let him know that I applied. Isn't that more effective than just applying online hoping that someone calls you back? Now you have a point of contact. So you definitely want to utilize networking and your volunteer and your community service, and actually pair that with your online searching or online applying. These were the questions that I received. And we're going to go ahead and cover all of them. First one is, how do you tell your employer that you're burnt out or disengaged? Next question is, can you be blacklisted for certain jobs that you apply to? If so, how do you know? Next one is, how do you transition back into the workforce after leaving the workforce for several years? Next one, besides LinkedIn, how can I strengthen my online presence? And the last one is, what's the best way to get noticed, or what's the best way to get my resume noticed? Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with the first question. How do you tell your employer that you're burnt out or disengaged? And if you're unemployed, this may not be a relevant question to you, but I can guarantee you once you get a job, it probably will. Because survey shows that over 50% of currently employed people are unhappy with their job. And I use the line from the Gladiator, are you not entertained? And that came from the movie. And I wanted to tell the person that asked this question that you have two options here. Either you being burnt out or disengaged is going to be a problem to your employer, or you're going to be a solution to your employer. And I don't want to come off as cynical, and I don't want to come off as mean or, negative. But I can tell you this, in the world of utopia, of course, HR is supposed to be this magical place that, provides a motivating and fulfilling work environment. But I can tell you now the system's broken. It's wishful thinking. Of course, they try to, but at the end of the day, it doesn't work. And the bigger the company, the less likely you're going to have more broken parts in the system. So this is something that you have to know going into it, that you're working with a system that's already broken. So if you go to your employer and tell them that you're burnt out and you're disengaged and, this is something that, may be causing problems, no one cares at the end of the day. And no one cares about your boredom or lack of motivation. What motivates one group of people may make another group cringe, and we know this. So that's why it's so hard for HR to provide this motivating, nurturing environment, because they can't please everyone. Your disclosure of being disengaged without a solution will be interpreted as a disgruntled employee. So you want to make sure that you're coming to the table with some solutions, because at the end of the day, it's not going to be your boss's responsibility to take care of you and make sure that you're happy. It's not. So if you're feeling disengaged, you're going to have to find out ways that, what can I do to be more engaged? How can I make this job more fulfilling? If not, this is going to be looked at as a liability and a concern for the company. In fact, you may be ruining a relationship with your employer and creating a problem for him or her. And though your co-workers may be sympathetic and perhaps even empathetic to this, you have to realize that many of these people may walk away with some type of resentment and irritation, because they may feel that you're no longer a team player. So they're also going to look at that you're burnt out and your disengagement is not going to be an excuse for crappy workmanship or crappy work ethic. So you want to make sure that if this is an issue, that you're bringing a solution to the table. And some of the solutions are you should be asking to be cross-trained or some type of new assignment that you can work on. You don't have to use the term I'm burnt out or, I'm disengaged, but you can say that, hey, I'm open to new challenges. And this way you can actually go to HR if that's even an option, depending on how you work. Or if you're actually with a company, and I laugh at that, but if you're actually with a company that, actually invests in, engagement and retention, and surprisingly many companies don't, but if you are working for one of those companies that do, maybe they'll be open to giving you a new assignment or cross-training you on a new venture. If not, take it upon yourself to look at internal opportunities. You want to keep out on internal postings within the department. Let your manager know that you're interested in applying, so that's also good to get their co-signature on your next opportunity. That way they can write you a nice letter of recommendation and pursue some internal opportunities that may arise. If all else fails, take some time off. If you're burnt out to the point, and this is possible, that it's physically making you sick, and it's people that do take time off or leave of absence because the stress has actually made them physically sick. I've seen people, they get hair loss, they break out, all type of physical ailments arise when your body's under stress. So consider taking a leave of absence or a sabbatical, depending on how long you want to part from your job. Also, see if your job has some type of employee assistance program. Again, if you work for one of these big companies that employ 10,000 plus people, I guarantee you they have an employee assistance program in place where you can take benefits of some type of social worker or psychologist or someone that can sit down and actually help you work through your problems. And of course, I think it's, somewhat is paid through the company. The last alternative would be to look for a new job. And I put that last because hopefully if you've taken time off, you already know this is going to be your next step. Again, I'm not telling you this is what you should do, but hopefully you're using that time wisely if you do decide to take a vacation or sabbatical or leave of absence. You're using that to look for a new job, not just relaxing at the house with your feet up. So hopefully when it's time to return, you found a new job or opportunity that you can pursue outside your current company. So these are my recommendations for someone that's burnt out and disengaged. If you just go to your boss and tell them this, from experience, you're going to be looked at as a problem. This is a disgruntled employee unless you can come with some type of solution. So that's my feedback on that question. Next one is, can a company blacklist you? Technically or legally, no. No, if you ever worked for a company or interviewed with a company, they technically can't, there's no list out there that has candidates' names on that says, do not interview, or this person's not a good it's no list out there. If there is, I don't know about it, and I've been doing this for almost a decade. So from what I know, there's no list out there that blacklists anyone from applying. I can tell you this: if you've applied to everything, applied to every single job posting regardless of its title, or you applied to job posting because of its title, because a lot of people just go by titles and they don't thoroughly read the requirements. And believe it or not, that title that you think you're qualified for requires a lot of things that you don't meet. So if you find yourself applying to jobs that you're not qualified for, or your experience is irrelevant, yes, not to say that you're blacklisted, but you can be ignored. Your resume becomes generic. Blacklist is not the term that HR uses anyway. It's either you're rehireable or you're not. So you're not eligible to be rehired or you are rehireable. That's about as close to blacklist as you can get in that, in the HR lingo. And usually if you're not rehireable, that's either because you've done something against the company, as far as you were terminated because you were stealing, or, something of that nature where, you're not able to be hired back. That's the only quote unquote blacklist I would think of. But if you're just a new candidate that's applying, there's no way that, someone's going to just say, well, we're not going to hire this person unless, like I said, you're applying to everything. You have no focus, which means that your resume may be all over the place. They really don't know what you do. You're kind of like a jack of all trades, and you know the rest. You're either a job hopper. When I mean a job hopper, these are non-contract jobs. There's nothing wrong with someone that may, been working temporary jobs for a while, that, they worked a year or two here or a couple months here, but their position had an end date. There's no issue with that, because that lets us know that you were gainfully employed doing something, working on projects. But if you find yourself with permanent positions that you voluntarily terminate every 6 months or every 12 months, that can be a red flag for employers. Also, no industry knowledge. That could be for any industry. You may be pretty much in one industry, and you may want to change industries for whatever reason. Some may say that yes, you may have the qualifications, but you just don't know what the industry needs, or you don't know how to meet our industry needs. That could be a reason as well. And everything else. And when someone asks this question, can a company blacklist you, I kind of inferred that they weren't getting responses back. So they probably were thinking that, well, if no one's contacting me back, I must be on some type of list for, not to be contacted. That's not the case. And that's why I put everything else in there. Anything can happen, and HR jobs and postings can be so fickle that, the position can be filled. It can be high volume, which means that you plus 500 other people applied. There's no sense of urgency is a big one. Hey, we posted this job, but really no sense of urgency to get it filled. We'll fill it this quarter, next quarter, we'll fill it when we fill it. And when you have jobs like that, what's that mean? It's not a priority. They're working to fill other jobs to have a higher priority. So your resume may be sitting there for a while. And I'm pretty sure I may have a couple people on the line that, I've even done it, or I actually been a witness to it when I was looking for a job back in my corporate days, is that I can apply for a job and get a call months later. And I forgot that I haven't applied. I applied for this back in, May, and here it is, November. They just now calling me back. That's because the position had no urgency. So now they're picking up the pace 6 months later. They're posting the job to either, fill a pipeline, and we'll reach out to the candidates later. Does it happen? Yes, unfortunately. And also, it can be a case of an internal hire. We're posting this job for legal reasons. We have to post the job to the public, but guess what? We already got our mind made up on who we're hiring. Happens all the time. We already know Susie May over here is getting this job. She's the next runner-up, but we have to post the job just for legal purposes. But we already know that she's going to get it. That could also be an issue. It happens all the time, internal hires. So don't always allude to it being, you're on a blacklist. That's not always the case. There are a lot of dynamics that go into the hiring process, especially in a recovering economy. Next one is, what is your plan of action, career transitions? This question was pertaining to being out of the workforce for an extended amount of time and looking to re-enter after several years out of the workforce. My advice to you will actually go back to the first slide that we had about making sure that you have some type of plan in place. How are you utilizing the hours in your day to make that transition? If you've been out of the workforce a long time, this is actually going to take some research on what exactly companies you want to target, and also get yourself up to speed to the industry. So before you even apply to jobs, that would be my first initiative. If I've been out of work or out of the industry, and when you say several years, this may be 5 or 10 years. This could be a decade or so. So if you've been out of work for that long, so much has changed in that amount of time. So your first initiative is to get up to date with what's currently going on in the industry. And that will include, going back to the first slide, connecting with professional organizations, professional associations that are in the industry. That's their job, to keep up to date with current trends and start figuring out where will you fit. After being out so long, you may not come in doing where you left off. That particular role may have changed. So you may have to come in at a different angle. So you're going to have to prepare yourself to see, how will I be able to re-enter this industry, and how am I going to get up to speed to do so? So that's the first thing, is to do your research, have some type of preliminary plan in place. This should include your companies that you want to target. Next thing you want to have is some type of effective marketing plan. And this is something that everyone should consider, not just people that are re-entering the workforce, but this is everyone. Effective marketing plan. How do you plan to get yourself out there? How do you plan for employers to notice you? Not only your resume, but your accomplishments, what you've done for the industry, what value you can bring to their organization. So you want to have a marketing plan in place. Competitive research tools. What you do today is things that we didn't do 5 years ago. Vice versa. How you look for a job 5, 10 years ago is definitely different than how you look for a job in 2015. What research tools are you going to use? Everything now is web-based. Every contact, every lead is at your fingertips. Use it. There's no reason why there should ever be a cold call. I don't even make cold calls anymore. Everything should be a warm introduction through some type of medium. Either you're networking through LinkedIn, either you're networking through some type of professional association, some type of discussion group, some type of forum. There should be some medium that you're using, that it should never be a cold call when you're reaching out to these contacts. And once you're able to find those research tools, you should be building relationships, and not just online. Putting a face with your name. Again, this is a company that you're trying to work for. Find out where these decision makers and employers network. What organizations are they a part of? Know your competition. I say this in every single workshop I've done, is research the people that are in the roles that you're applying for. What's their background? What groups are they a part of? Because these are the same people that are going to be applying to the jobs. So you definitely want to know your competition. Learn not only how to sell yourself, but sell your solution. And I'm big on a solution, because selling yourself is not enough. And it goes back to your competition. Most people that are applying to these jobs are going to have the same education. They're going to have the same experience. They're going to, what's going to make you different? Your solution. Your experiences are going to make you different. How you solve problems are going to make you different. The value you bring to an organization, and your past value you've brought to your past employers, that's going to set you apart. So know how to sell your solution. We talked about this in other workshops as well. Closing the deal. Closing the deal doesn't mean you always are going to get an interview. Closing the deal also consists of knowing when to walk away. There's so many people that waste so many time with employers that are not going to hire them. You could have had so many companies in your pipeline by now, but you're waiting on this one company to call you back. Move on. So closing the deal is not always getting the yes. Closing the deal is getting that unspoken no. And that unspoken no can come from lack of communication. They don't call you back. They don't follow up. They don't provide feedback. Know when to walk away from these situations. Also have a follow-up process in place. Follow-up and feedback process are a lot of things that are lacking in people's plan. They'll reach out, they go out to these networking events, they'll join these organizations, but they're not following up with their network. And then this went back to a past program that I said, when you don't follow up, you fall into that taker relationship, and everyone's been in a taking relationship before. It doesn't have to be a personal relationship. You can have family members that are takers, and everybody knows that one person that rings your phone, that the first thing that goes through your head is, what do they want? You already know they're calling for something. So you don't want to fall in that category that you're only reaching out when you want something. You want to build a relationship, and that consists of following up and providing feedback. And this is something I talked about when you network. You should be walking into a network relationship trying to figure out, what can I give? When you're at a networking event and you're meeting one of these executives or these decision makers, you want to know, what can you bring to this relationship? It's not should be, what can I get? Can I get their contact information? Can I get their business card? What can you give to this relationship? Because giving is giving is a form of psychology. When you give to someone, someone already feels indebted to you without you even doing anything. They almost feel obligated to return that favor. So you want to learn to be able to give in your relationships, and that's through follow-up and feedback. The next question I had was the online presence, and that was find your niche. Who is your audience? So someone asked me about how to strengthen their online presence. The first thing is to find your niche. Well, I'm going to go read all of them together because I want to have 15 minutes for Q&A. You want to have a niche when you're doing your online presence. You want to increase your network. You want to be consistent, have offline networking, and you want to be able to evaluate, which means track your results. So when you're online, have a niche that you're going to be known for. You know, you want to be the go-to person for one thing. Someone told me you can be good at 10 or great at 1. You know, or you can be mediocre at 20 or great at 1. You know, so have a niche, and that's what you want to be known for. That's what your online presence wants to be known for. This is the person to go to if you have a marketing issue. This is the person to go to if you have an IT issue. This person does processes. You want to have a niche. You want to increase your network. And you know why this is important? Because if you have no network, who are you going to share all this awesome information with? It's kind of like how Twitter works. If you only have 5 followers, guess what? Only 5 people are receiving your information. And you're depending on those 5 people to share it. And that's if they share it. So that's why increasing your network online is detrimental to the whole social media process. Because the more people you have in your circle, the more people are able to get your word, get your message. You know, and I see a lot of people on LinkedIn, you know, they have under 100 connections, and you have to remember that, you know, only 25 or 30 people are receiving your message, and I can tell you 75% of them aren't even online. So how many people really are getting what you're saying or getting what you're presenting? Be consistent. So if you're going to start an online campaign or increase your online presence, you want to actually be consistent with this. Have some type of offline, that goes back to offline networking. How are you going to connect these people, connect with them offline? How are you going to put a name with a face? And I'm sorry, I just now realized this slide is totally off. I guess I was worried more about the animation than the verbiage, huh? Sorry about that. So you actually want to take your networking offline. The next thing you want to do is evaluate your results. What's working? This goes for your entire plan. You know, you can't change what you don't measure. So if you're doing something and it's not producing results, and you're not tracking it, you don't know what's working and what's not. That's why it's very pertinent that you're tracking what you're doing. Are the networking events getting most of my leads? Or me reaching out to people on LinkedIn, is this getting most of my leads? Or attending this XYZ networking event? So you want to make sure that you're tracking where you're getting your leads from and what leads are actually pushing you closer towards your goal. And that goes through evaluating and tracking. And my last question I have, what's the best way to get your resume noticed? Directly. Direct send. If there's a possibility that you can get the contact information of the hiring manager or the employer or the HR manager, that's the best way to get it noticed. Not through an ATS system, where it's going to be parsed through software and weeded out by not having the right keywords. The best way to get your resume noticed is to get it in front of the person that makes the hiring decision. So that takes, research on your end. Again, and everyone that you can contact is, like I said, at your fingertips. Most of the jobs on LinkedIn, they even tell you who posted. So-and-so posted this job. Not all of them. I know not all of them don't, but I've seen more than most. Now I've been seeing more jobs actually have, the person that posted the job. And don't look for the person that posted. Look for the person that's over the person that posted. That's who you want to know. Because guess what? That's who they're going to send it to anyway. So that would be the answer to that question to get your resume noticed. So I am going to open the lines up. Got about 15 minutes left. And I want to answer any questions that I have. Have someone that had a question. I had a question, what can I do to overcome the fact that I was out of a job for nearly 2 years, laid off, and was raising my infant child in professional field, scientist working for a pharmaceutical company? Okay, unfortunately, I have no course training, volunteering, or part-time jobs to add to my resume in the absence for the working field. Thank you. Okay, so you're telling me everything that I recommend you don't have, as far as, going out there, getting training, and any type of formal courses. My question is, what got you the job 2 years ago? Something got this employer to hire you 2 years ago before you were laid off, or before you voluntarily left your employment. In 2 years, being honest with you, is not a big gap. To me, it's not. It's people that's been out of work longer than 2 years, unfortunately. But 2 years is not that huge that I can say a lot of stuff has happened in 2 years. Things have changed, of course, but it's not such a severe gap like if someone's been out of work, 10, 15 years. Which is totally different from someone that's been out of work 1 or 2 years. My suggestion to you is all the things that you say I currently do not have to add to your resume, you should start getting. I don't know what you're doing now. I don't know if you were, and you don't say if you were at the fact, for the 2 years when you were laid off. I guess you were either had severance or you had unemployment. So I don't know if it's the time that you would have to go back now, but my suggestion was, again, start joining those professional organizations in your field. You said you were a scientist working for a pharmaceutical company. I don't know what type of sciences you were. Were you in R&D, research and design, or research and development? What part of a pharmaceutical company did you work in? Because I can tell you right now, as long as that, your skills are up to date, you shouldn't have the issue getting back in there. It's about who you know and, networking with the right people. So I definitely would network, get out there, start reaching out to, and 2 years isn't long. You should still be able to have contact with people that were in your industry when you left. So if you have colleagues that are, still with the organization, or people that you can reach out to let them know that you're looking to re-enter the organization or re-enter the industry, that should be helpful as well. See if you can get your network involved. And if you can't, again, Start looking at ways that you can start networking, volunteering, doing pro bono, training, anything that you can do to get yourself active in that field again. And your first thing that you get may not be full-time employment. It may be something part-time. It may be a pro bono job, or maybe a course that you have to take to even be considered to enter the field. But look at what you need to do to get back in. Look at your competition, what they have going on, and develop a plan of action on what you're going to do, the steps that you're going to take from what I've already said in this workshop to get the ball rolling and get you back in the right direction. And again, my first recommendation is start looking at organizations that are in the pharmaceutical industry that you can start networking and joining. So that way you can start rubbing elbows with the decision makers in that industry. And I see people, if you do log off early, there is a survey I like you to take. It does consist about 7 or 8 questions. It gives me insight on the entire workshop, lets me know things that I should improve, questions that you'd like to ask, topics you'd like to cover in the next session. Right now we're doing 25% off of writing services. I can tell you in the next 2 weeks, March, our plans will be going up, and we're actually going to be offering packages. So if that's something that you want to look at as well moving forward, if you're looking to make a career change. Let me see, are there any more questions that need to be answered before we log off tonight? That was a good question. Thank you for coming forward with that. And hopefully throughout the workshop you were able to get insight on what you should do. But again, that would be my first line of defense, because right now I'm seeing a lot of people get jobs just through word of mouth. Because like I said, we're recovering from an economy that's, reviving from a recession. So you're going to have a surplus of people that are unemployed like you are, that were either laid off, that were somehow displaced through this whole recession, that are going to be looking to be employed. So that means you're going to have a whole lot of resumes that HR has to go through. And guess what's going to lighten their load? A referral. So you're telling me someone that can do this job, and I don't have to go through 500 resumes? Okay, let me take a look at them. So a lot of people are going through referrals and going through word of mouth. I can tell you that right now. So that's why I'm telling you, your best bet is to start networking in those industry associations, getting your name out there, and getting some of these referrals for some of these jobs. That should be a good recommendation I can give to you. Are there any more questions I have tonight? Don't see any more questions tonight. Well, it looks like we're going to end about 5 minutes early. It's about 7:55. If you have a question that you can think of, shoot me an email. My email's here, as well as the email that you'll receive following the workshop if you do want to reach out to me. That's my contact number with my extension. The best way to contact me is either through email, or you can go online to make an appointment. That way we can set up a time to talk, and I can carve out time in my calendar. Other than that, thank you again for attending. Hope to see you next Monday. We do this every Monday from 7 to 8 Eastern Standard Time. Have a good night.